Hi, so how's it going? So today I want to show you guys a little bit of change that I've decided to do for our fourth grade year going forward. Um, Basically, I showed this whole shelf. I'll link the video if you haven't watched it or if you want to. I showed this whole shelf the beginning of the school year, which was our read alouds and independent reads. So I'm not going to go over the books in the bottom because these were all shown in that video. Well, they should be. And so basically for the fourth grade year, I kind of had an idea kind of a concern, just a personal one for me with my daughter, that I wasn't introducing enough classic books to her anymore. And so I updated the shelf, and this is what my video is going to be about. It's kind of long and rambly, hopefully not. About how I've kind of wanting to update her reading to be inclusive of more classics. And the word classics is kind of, also in my mind would include things like modern classics, because she's drawn to fantasy, which is like most of the bottom two shelves you see here, and that's the ones I showed in the video. And so she has personal reading time, and then she also has like homeschool reading time. And so I've updated her her homeschool reading time, which is like 30 minutes a day after homeschool, to rotate between these like more fantasy books, which we already had purchased for the fourth grade year, and then to the classics. And I want to show you guys what classics we have, which ones we read, and then I'm going to sit down and show you guys my opinion on some classics that I want to get for her for the upcoming years, and then my opinion on a few of my favorite, I'm going to call them like modern classics, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about what led to the change in that. But first I'm just going to show you guys the books that are on like her to be read pile that I'm changing going forward. Okay, so like I said, those bottom ones I already went over, and that I'm gonna link that video, independent reads. Okay, so basically I added the top shelf, which is books we already had, and I'm gonna show you guys on our bookshelf too. So basically we have the whole set of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. So I added these two that she's gonna start the Hobbit next. She actually already started it, and she really didn't like it, but she's like me, she reads like multiple books at once. And I'm gonna also sit down and talk about that in a minute, about like encouraging children to read, my opinion with her, versus letting her read what she wants as she gets older, versus like assigned reading. So she's gonna restart the Hobbit, and then she's gonna have the option to do the Wind in the Willows. This is the Little House on the Prairie series, book 1, Little House in the Big Woods. And then these two came in a book set we have. So Heidi and then Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Again, she started this one, but she didn't finish it, and I'm encouraging her to finish it. So, okay, and then let me show you, this is another pile I just put here. They don't go here, I just put them here for the sake of the video. But, so these two are so fat, they don't fit on that. But these two, all of these are also books that we're either reading for fourth grade as a read aloud, which is right now we're reading Little Prince. And then all of these, so these two, Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales and then Grimm's fairy tales, we're gonna read as read alouds a little bit, but then of course we're not gonna get to all of the stories. So I'm gonna encourage her to finish these because they're considered, classic literature. And then Robinson Crusoe, Frankenstein, Little Women, and then Swiss Family Robinson. So all of these books we already owned, but instead of just putting them on our shelf, like I'm encouraging her now to read them, and I'm going to talk about that. Okay, and then so we did Little Women as a read aloud for third grade, and it did not work for us as a read aloud. I think there were too many characters, and we both got lost. So I want to encourage her to read it on her own, and that's why I put it in the stack. So these are all books that, like other than this one, and these two we're doing as read alouds, these 4 she has the option to start. Now, Frankenstein, I have actually never read myself, and I don't know if it's going to be, I don't know the reading, like if it's going to be too dark or whatever, so I need to kind of go back and reread that one, but I think everything else should be okay. Yeah, and then now let me show you guys, so this bookshelf, it's not really a bookshelf tour because I'm just showing you guys one shelf. So I want to show you guys the modern classics and the classics that I'm showing in this video that she read. So she has other books in her room. And then, yeah, I have one more section to show you guys. Okay, so Harry Potter. And then, okay, so these are all the books that she read. So here's Greek Heroes, Pippi Longstocking and Borrowers, Peter Pan. This is Winnie the Pooh. This is the poetry When We Were Young poetry one. And then this is the French version of The Little Prince, Le Petit Prince. We are reading the English version. Okay. This one she hasn't read on her own, but my husband and her have kind of gone over it a little bit. And then, because he speaks French. Okay, and then Stuart Little, Charlotte's Web. This is Anne of Green Gables. She and I read this as a read aloud, but we have the vintage copy. And then A Wrinkle in Time. She's actually about to start the second one of this series, which I'm happy about because it's it's on almost every kid's to read book list. Really good literature. Okay. And then Shel Silverstein, of course. We have a lot of his books, and I consider those classics. And then Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda. More of his work. Glass Elevator. She really loves him. And then BFG, James the Giant Peach, and then Harriet the Spy. My Father's Dragon, and then Dr. Dolittle, and then the Penderwicks. And she also read more of these. I just pulled some of these from her room, and this shelf actually usually looks better, but I pulled some books that I'm going to show you guys in a minute that's on my table. So a lot of the books are missing, but it doesn't normally look like this. Not that it matters. But yeah, so I just wanted to show you guys kind of what we read, and that's the point of me making this video, is for to mentally pinpoint and make a video on what she's read, what she hasn't, what I want to include going forward to mix in more classics, because a lot of these we read in first grade, second grade, third grade, and then I had a different philosophy for fourth grade, which I'm changing now, and which I'm going to talk about. Oh yeah, let me show you one more thing, which is the top. Okay, so these are more, this is the whole series of Little House on the Prairie. I don't know if that's what it's called, but that's all the books. We actually bought this as part of a curriculum in kindergarten, and we read the first one, and I put it back on the shelf because we literally read this out loud in either kindergarten or first. So she wants to reread it on her own. So I have the whole series, and then this was just a little book set I had, which is Classic Story Collection for Girls, which are all these stories. And she read The Secret Garden. But she read Black Beauty. It was too depressing for her. So she actually stopped, and I was fine with that. I didn't make her finish it, of course. And then so she's planning on reading, Heidi. The Water Babies I know really nothing about, other than it's just a classic, it's a classic literature book. Oh yeah, and then Alice in Wonderland she's gonna finish. Both of these are we got this at a thrift shop so many years ago. This, I don't even know if they still make it. I'll try to link as much as I can. This is not a class. These aren't, of course, classic literature. They're newer middle grade fiction, but she's still working on them as a series. This is a Mysterious Benedict Society, and she has one book pulled out because she didn't finish it yet. She kind of lost interest. It's one of those series where it's I was positive she would love it, and then she read the first book, but she's not connecting with the second one, so she's paused on that. Same thing with this series. Of course, I was drawn. The Wildwood Chronicles, I thought it was just beautiful, and it is. The covers are beautiful. She read the first one, but that's just her. She plans on finishing both, though. And then this, I guess you would call this sort of a classic, yeah. It's not classic, but the Enchanted Forest Chronicles, she finished these, and she really loved them. And then here's the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, and the Lord of the Rings, which she's still working on those. Okay, so I really became aware of this book called The Western Canon by Harold Bloom. It's written for adults, and then basically it was a book that my husband wanted to read, and I was like, what does he mean, the Western Canon? And I was just curious about, I heard the word canon used as a reference to different things, and I wrote the definition of it because I didn't want to mess it up. So basically, Harold Bloom, who's a literary critic and professor, he's now deceased, I believe, but so Harold Bloom, he wrote a lot of books about reading and literary criticism and things like that. Books that he thinks are classics that, you know, kids should read. He has like an anthology for kids that I want to get. But he also wrote a lot of books for adults on reading. And so I wrote the definition. This isn't his definition, but this is just like I Googled it. And basically the Western canon is a body of culture, literature, music, philosophy, and art that is highly valued in the West. And it's kind of equals what the status of like classic literature is. And then it's like, you know, what's relevant, what stays relevant. And to me, it's like I can't define the word classic because like I didn't make up that word and I'm probably doing it poorly on my own. But I started thinking about what that means and how books that were written 100 years ago are still relevant and why. And I mean, of course, it's subjective, and what's relevant to you is not relevant to me possibly. But then there are works of art and works of literature that obviously many people have brought and highlighted to where we're all familiar with. And sometimes someone might hate it, the same work, as someone else might love it. But the point is, what's relevant, you know, something that shows character or weaknesses in people, strength in character, weaknesses, morals, which, like I said, is very subjective. But yet, I was starting to wonder if what my daughter was reading as a now fourth grader, she's a very active reader and she's reading so much. I started to wonder, is she reading enough classics? And because for me, it's like, okay, there's definitely books that fall into different categories, and I'm not going to go into all that because like I said, it's very subjective. Like a lot of people disagree or agree on what makes a good book to begin with, and that's like subjective, of course. But for me, there's so many books that are just, you know, in our canon that are referenced that I want her to know, and characters. So it's like if she's watching something or listening, even music, like you know, we'll make references to literature and poetry and movies and art. And so I don't want her to be left behind as she gets older, to where she's not getting certain references. Because for me personally, I really wasn't, like, I read a lot when I was a child, but I read a lot of like picture books for a long time. I really didn't read a lot of novels or have novels in my home. My family weren't really readers. So I really wasn't even exposed to a lot of like good literature until I was like college age. So I really want her to be exposed, not to everything, which is impossible, but to more. And I did a very good job of doing that. This is just my personal opinion. And like, I still want her to read whatever she wants. And I'm going to encourage her and buy her whatever book she wants. Like, you know, like right now she's really obsessed with Keeper of the Lost Cities. I think the last book is on pre-order right now. And it's fantasy, middle grade. You know, obviously it's new fiction, so it can't be called a classic. But I'm going to order it for her. And so I'm not saying I'm not going to let her read for pleasure and fun and, you know, things like that. And I'm not saying anything about Keeper of the Lost City specifically, but I'm just using that book as an example. So what I want to do going forward, and this like is I want to mix in more classics. And someone might say, well, weren't you doing that to begin with? And I was. So kindergarten through third grade, I was being more active in what she was reading. But then, this is why I'm making this video, to explain it, I guess, because so then when she turned, I don't know, I guess like 8, her reading just went like so quick. Like she was reading so much, and starting in 3rd grade, I would say, that when she would read a book, like say a book, you know, like written in like 1940, and she didn't like the way it was written, because she just couldn't relate to it anymore because she was reading so much like modern fiction, that she just was bored out of her mind. And so I would tell her, well, you don't have to finish it. And I feel conflicted on that, even making this video, because I don't have all the answers. I just know what I can do, what I think is best for my child, based on my own reading goals for myself, for her, even that my husband shares. And basically, we want to just expose her to a variety of literature. And what's been happening over the past like year and I was going to let it happen for 4th grade, is I've been just encouraging her to only read for pleasure what she wants to read, and not encouraging her to say like read classics or read different genres. I was just letting her read new fantasy, which is pretty much all she wants to read. And like I said, that's different for every child, because if your child is a reluctant reader, then nothing's wrong with that. But she's you know, she's been reading on her own independently, like novels, since for a while. So for me, I think she's at the point where I feel like I want to change things. So that's when I decided I thought it'd be fun to make a video for anybody else who has a child that you want to introduce more classics, because I think it'd be fun for hopefully for you to see what classics she's read, which I just showed on the shelf, my 9-year-old 4th grader, and then what classics I plan on purchasing and looking for going forward and adding in, other than the ones I just showed you guys on my shelf. So I have a list here. I want to say, I hope I explained that correctly. It's also a personal goal of mine to read more classics, because like I said, like I had to catch up. And it's just like we're just a huge reading family. Some other people, like I said, this is just a personal opinion, and nothing's wrong with reading just modern fiction. Like, I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, for me personally, as her educator, as her home educator, I want her to read what what Harold Bloom would consider classic literature in his book, The Western Canon, which is which is for adults, but yet, like I said, for like Dickens and Shakespeare and Charlotte Bronte, Jane Austen, Maya Angelou. But then when it comes to children's classics, I still want her exposed to more. So like I said, so what I'm going to do now is for her independent reading time, which is 30 minutes. So in the morning, she reads whatever she wants. Wings of Fire, she really loves right now. She's on book 6 or 7. Keeper of the Lost Cities, she's anticipating the next one. Like those, she's reading right now in the morning. And then in the afternoons, for in her independent reading time after homeschool for 30 minutes, she's going to rotate her more like the modern fiction I showed you guys in my independent reads video, which I'm going to link. And then with the classics. So her next one is The Hobbit, that she's going to try to reread, because my husband, that's his favorite series, and he's the one who bought it for her. So yeah, so The Hobbit's next. And then after The Hobbit, like she will be free to read any classics anytime she wants. But since she's not drawn to them, I felt like I had to step in and say, because like I said, my personal desire for her, I had to step in and say, you have to rotate, because I didn't want to just take away the modern fiction. Obviously, I'm never going to do that. But I'm saying, like, even in the homeschool time, I could have done that. To speak on culture. Like, I'm actually personally watching the show right now, Gilmore Girls. And I would say if you're like a homeschool parent, which you probably are, or even if you're not, if you're a book lover, I would encourage you to watch the show if you haven't, because Rory, who is the daughter, it's like a mom and daughter, and so Rory is, she loves to read. She's one of the main characters, and she got accepted to this like private school, but she plans on going to Harvard, but that's just at the beginning. And then I'm rewatching the series, but so I'm literally like watching the books that Rory reads, and of course she is in high school, so yes, she is older than my child, but I'm watching the books that she's reading, that she's assigned in her classes on the show, and that I didn't read it. I wasn't reading in high school, because I didn't really go to an advanced, like, I don't know. I wasn't, anyway. So she's reading like classic literature that mainly is for adults, obviously too old for my child. But my point is, it inspired me, along with the fact that I said I was reading about this book, The Western Canon by Howard Bloom. It inspired me, like Rory's reading inspired me to get my daughter more antiquated with classics. The ones I highlighted are books that we have, and the ones that aren't highlighted are books that I want to get either from the library or purchase. Like, they're going to be on my list when I go to thrift stores, and then possibly I'm going to purchase some of these for 5th grade until we run out of what we still have some that we need to go through. she needs to read. But okay, so I'm going to name them all, and this might give you ideas if you're interested in having your child read the classics. I'm also very interested in adding more. There's plenty that need to be added. So Heidi, Little Women, The Wind in the Willows, Winnie the Pooh, Anne of Green Gables. And I want to say about Winnie the Pooh, like we haven't read Winnie the Pooh since like she was probably a toddler, because all we have the poetry book when we were young, but we don't have like his classics. And that's a book that I really want to buy, because I don't care how old she is. It's considered one of the best written children's classics by a lot of people, and I really would like her to reread it. So Winnie the Pooh, Anne of Green Gables, Alice in Wonderland, Charlotte's Web, The Little Prince, Mary Poppins, Sherlock Holmes, The Wizard of Oz, The Borrowers, Pippi Longstocking, Robinson Crusoe, Swiss Family Robinson, a Lord of the Rings series, Chronicles of Narnia, A Little Princess, The Secret Garden, Peter Pan, Robin Hood, Bridge to Terabithia, sorry if I'm saying that, I never read that book, Bridge to Terabithia, sorry, Tom's Midnight Garden, Tuck Everlasting, and some of these are a little bit more modern. I'm going to talk about that too in a minute. Tuck Everlasting, The Giver, My Louisiana Sky, The City of Ember, The Family Under the Bridge, Echo, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. Okay. So, and then I have a few that are more like for older, like To Kill a Mockingbird, The Outsiders, The Catcher in the Rye, which some of those I need to reread because I'm not sure. Those might be a little higher level, but I wrote those down too. And then, like I said, this is an ongoing list, and this is just like one page of my scrambles. I'm going to add more to it. First, I'm going to show you guys a few things from the library, and then different ways to introduce classics to your child. And then the last thing will be my own personal opinion on like what I think modern classics are, and some middle grade novels that I'm considering modern classics that I read and that my daughter hasn't read yet, but I'm going to encourage her to read, and I'm going to tell you why, that I think are good for adults and for kids, because I love to read kids books too. Okay, so I've already shown these if you watch my videos, but I'm just going to show them real quick. This is just a world full of Dickens stories, and this is a stage full of Shakespeare. So these are the modern, this is a modern retelling. It's not, of course, the traditional Shakespeare. Some people have different opinions on that. I prefer the modern because like I'm bad at reading Shakespeare, but if you want the modern, then this is a good option to introduce Shakespeare to your child, which is of course like one of the main classics ever. And so it's just 12 stories. I'm just going to quickly go through it. Here's the stories, and then what I really love is how the illustrations are beautiful, but how it has the cast of characters right here. And then it has like the story, which we're doing this year as a read aloud. And I know we're not going to get to every single story because, we don't want to read this whole book for we read very slowly. So we'd be on this book for probably like 2 months or 3 or something. So I'm rotating this with our other read alouds, but she'll finish this on her own. And then this one is same concept, a world full of Dickens stories. So I'm currently reading Great Expectations because I'm trying to add more classics to my list too, and I've never read Dickens. It's a lot of stuff I haven't read, and so I'm reading Great Expectations right now. And I was actually happy to use this as a companion to Great Expectations because when I start reading a book, I get overwhelmed with characters, and I like to usually draw or write, the whole cast of characters. And I love how this book did that for Great Expectations. And so I went and I already looked at this, and I'm using it as a reference. And then it has I didn't read this yet because I didn't want to spoil it. But my daughter and I are going to start this for Christmas. We're going to do a Christmas Carol. So those are just two of my ideas to introduce classics to your child. Okay. And then these two I got from the library. I thought I will eventually buy this, but I thought it'd be fun just to check it out. Just the original Winnie the Pooh. I'm not sure this is like original illustrations. I think it is. By Ernest H. Shepard. And so, yeah, so I just thought it'd be fun to check this out. I'm gonna kind of read it, and like I said, I do plan on purchasing it because it is a classic that my daughter has not read independently. And then this I just found on people's list, and when people were listing books that they think children should read, and this is The Princess and the Goblin. I honestly never heard of this book, and I just thought, well, it sounds interesting. And it was written in, let's see, wow, it was first published in 1872. So yeah, so it sounds really interesting, about a princess and a castle and a labyrinth. So it sounds like almost like fantasy-ish with the goblins. And yeah, so I think she'd actually like it. Again, it's something that I just wanted to check out, kind of preview, and then see if I'm going to put it on our list or keep it on our list. And then these two books are just kind of fun, which kind of has to do with the video, which is the theme, which is reading today. This one is, so there's like a whole bunch of books like this, which is like, books to read with your kids, like what books to read. But, I've read so many of those books, but I just grabbed these two. And so this one is just 100 best books for kids. And of course, these are like just to give you to give people ideas. So I did read this book, and I did, I skimmed through it, of course, because my daughter, we do still read picture books, but I really want to see what novels they had in here and why. And so, of course, the first one is A Secret Garden, which is almost on everyone's list. My daughter did read that book already. And so I did think it was nice because she actually includes information on the book and or the author. And then she tells a little bit about the plot. And so I did like that. That she tells, and she also tells you when it was written. And this is the Book of Books. So this was apparently a PBS series that I never heard of, but then I checked out this book because I thought it was fun because it's just another list on books. This one's a little bit more for adults, of course, but they do have a few children's books in here. I actually just read the whole, not read it, I skimmed through it, but a lot of the books, it was fun because I actually did get some books in here that I never heard of. And the first one is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. What I like about this book is it's illustrated. So it has the photo of the author and then the book cover. So it's a little bit more engaging, which I know it's not for kids. Mostly this is The Alchemist, which actually I read that book this year and I loved it. So it gave me ideas. And it's interesting to see what they included. I looked it up, and apparently people voted. I'm not sure who voted, when or where, but apparently people voted somehow through PBS when they made the series, and that's how they chose these books. It's the books who were voted for the most amount of times made it in this book. I'm not sure, but so it's kind of fun to look through. I would love to see a book like this for just kids literature. Beloved. I started this book and I never got through it because it was a little dark, which her writing is beautiful. If her writing wasn't so beautiful, I wouldn't have even got as far as I got. I actually want to finish, and I've checked it out twice. But yeah, so it was fun to I read that, I didn't read that, blah, blah, blah. And this one I would recommend. This one I actually think is actually a nice book. But see, they have Harry Potter, which is a kid's book, but most of them are adults books. But yeah. But like I said, and they have The Giver. But I would like to see a kid's version of just this, and then it would be really engaging. That was from the library. Talk about my opinion on modern classics. Okay, so to me, like I talked about, Winnie the Pooh, Shakespeare, The Secret Garden, Wizard of Oz. No one, I don't think, on earth would disagree that that's classic literature. But then when it comes to modern classics, we don't have the time frame because these books are new. So what withstands time is what most people consider classics, because it's if a book was written 100 years ago and we're still reading it, why? My opinion on modern classics and middle grade, the rest of the books I have right here are middle grade fiction that I personally love. And I think what makes a modern classic is the same thing that makes a classic, except obviously it's not accepted as a classic yet because it's so new. But universal themes, like compassion, humanity, love, coming of age, learning about life, like morals, quotable, the language that the author uses, like quotable things, things where you're like, wow. These are the books that I think that adults and kids would like because of the themes of the story. And I think that speaks highly of the author and the writing. Same reason why I want to read the classics is because, So the first books are Skunk and Badger by Amy Timberlake, and then Egg Marks the Spot, which is the second one. So this one, I don't know if I'd call middle grade fiction because it's much shorter, but I think it possibly is in that section. It's like chapter book-ish because it has bigger font, but I'm still including it as like middle grade fiction for adults. Even though, like I said, a much younger child could enjoy this. And me as an adult, I enjoy it. So this really reminded me of The Wind in the Willows. It's like the classic animal stories that's lighthearted, sweet. I didn't read the second one yet because we're going to do these two together this year as a read aloud. But I read this one. I literally loved it. Like, it was one of those books I read it, and I literally was like, I want to buy this book. Like, there's nothing stopping me. And my daughter hasn't read it yet because we're going to read it together. It's just a really cute friendship story. And it has like themes, about, forgiveness and, like just the different character traits and personalities of different people, and accepting other people for who they are and things like that. Even though it's animals, I'm using the word people, but you know what I mean. So they might as well be people. They're very human-like. So, these books I would consider, in my opinion, of what could be considered a modern classic. Like, I could see these books resonating 50 years from now. I really could. And these are books that I've already purchased as gifts for family members, and then I just think they're wonderful. Like I said, I haven't read the second one, but the first one's so good, I can't imagine the second one not being. But based on the first one and the same characters, of course, it's wonderful. And yes. Okay. So that's the first one. So the second one, these are a bunch. These are all of Kate DiCamillo's books. So Kate DiCamillo, if you're talking about what a modern classic is, that is a children's writer, she's the first writer that comes to mind. And when I'm using the word modern, obviously, like, you could say Harry Potter, which has been around for a while, because like I remember reading it. I actually had a college professor assign me Harry Potter. I'm like rambling. Okay. So Harry Potter's been around for a while, and then some people critically, it's almost on every single book list, like for like books like for kids to read. Okay. So you could say that's a modern classic. But when I'm using the term modern classic, I'm just talking about like the past, like, like 50 years, but it could be within the past, like these are like brand new, like, so I'm using the term loosely. Okay. So this is Kate DiCamillo. When I think of modern classics, as in like, what is one author that is something like an author that I think will be resonating with kids 100 years from now, and that's Kate DiCamillo. I love Kate DiCamillo. She's my favorite children's author. She's actually the one who got me rereading children's literature, because when I first started homeschooling, it was like, yeah, we did read alouds, but I really wasn't into a lot of them. I was just like, yeah, okay. When we read, it started with the Tale of Despero. When I read the Tale of Despero with my daughter, I was like, wow. I was just blown away. And it's just, I don't have time to go in every single one. I'm going to like talk about them a little bit. Okay, the Tale of Despero, I'm rereading it actually right now. Totally, it's about a mouse. Totally deals with universal themes about humanity and love, and the humanity. There's humans in it too. Humanity, love, like forgiveness, family issues. It's just the writing is beautiful. She has a lot of quotable sentences. It's just awesome. Okay, so there's a Tale of Despero, which is if I had to rank her books, it'd be really hard, but that's like one of my, let's see. These two are my favorite, like, animal series that she has. She has like some that deal with animals. The Tale of Despereaux, all of them I recommend, and I consider them modern classics, and I think they'd be awesome to introduce to your children if you haven't already, and for yourself. Okay, so, and all of these are books that I'm recommending that I think will be very rich to add to your libraries. Okay, or rent from the library, whatever, you know what I mean. Okay, so The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, another one, which is based on, it's like a stuffed rabbit, but, he's an animal named Edward Tulane. You can tell she's obviously influenced by things like the Velveteen Rabbit, and it even reminds me, I know she's probably not influenced by Toy Story, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of one of the Toy Story movies, like Toy Story, the Velveteen Rabbit, is very classic, even like The Wind in the Willows, Winnie the Pooh, stuff like that. Beautiful story, and just about a rabbit who sort of gets lost physically, and you can say intellect, like emotionally, and then he kind of, the journey of him trying to find his way home. Okay, so then beautiful. This is her newest book. Let me finish with the animal ones. Yeah, so these, okay, so this is like, I think her first book that she ever wrote, Because of Winn-Dixie. This one I really didn't connect with as much as the two I just showed you. It's a little bit more like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I need to reread it actually, but this was one of the first Kate DiCamillo books we read. This is actually one of my daughter's favorites of hers. So again, a story about a little girl, her dog, her family. It is beautifully written, same thing. Just about trials and tribulations of life. I recommend it. These two, okay, so The Magician's Elephant, again about an animal, elephant, and a boy, an orphan, and it's about like, it's just about like the when things go wrong, and like the universal theme of that, and then like trying to find, again, like the same theme. A lot of her books have the same theme of like the characters trying to find their way home, physically and just like emotionally, and she takes you through that with the character, like the ups and downs and the emotional things. And this one's a really good story. I really like it. And then this one is like the only one that I would say is a little darker. It's a little bit more, I would say, for older kids. That's my opinion. My daughter and I did read this together when she was like in 2nd or 3rd grade, but it was a little dark. This is the only one out of all of her work that I can't really reread because it's a little dark. And when I say it's dark, I don't mean like murdering and things like that, but it has something to do with an animal, and I'm very sensitive to things like that. So it's basically a tiger, it starts off with a tiger in the woods. Well, tiger in a cage, and then about, in the woods. And so basically it's about a boy. It's like friendship and what to do about this tiger. And it's just a very good story. And it's like one of those stories where it's like I said, it is dark in the sense that if you're sensitive to things to do with animals, but yet on the other hand, I was glad I read it, okay. This one's The Beatrice Prophecy, which also has to deal with an animal, but the animal is not the main protagonist. It's her. And so this one's her newest work. I actually pre-ordered it, and I really liked it. I still really, like I said, rank those two first ones I showed you guys as my top favorite for the ones with animals, but I really liked it. My daughter really liked it. And it's about, basically it's a little bit more, I don't know, it's about like there is a creature that the monks of the Chronicles of Sorrowing fear above all others, Anzuelica the goat. The monks fear her sharp teeth and her head and willy ways, and so imagine Brother Edict's terror when he goes to feed Anzuelica one morning and finds a child in the pen with the demon goat. The child does not know where she came from. She does not know who her people are. She only remembers one thing, her name, Beatrice. So it's kind of like a mystery, and it's really good. Mystery in the sense that this little girl trying to figure out where she came from. Again, universal theme of that. Okay. And then this one's a little bit more what I would call like a traditional like kids book. Not that her other ones aren't, obviously, but this one I didn't enjoy as much as an adult. because it is what it is. It is a kid's book. It's way more whimsical. It's way more silly. So this one, again, was one of my daughter's favorites, which makes sense. You know, it's written for kids. But it's not one of my favorites, but I still think it's all of her books, I wouldn't buy them if I didn't think they were good. Like, they're all good. This one's made into a movie. So was, I think The Tiger Rising is a movie, or it is going to be made into a movie. The Teledespero is also a movie. Probably almost all of her books are going to be made into movies. But this one, I recommend. I think a lot of different kids would like this book. Because even though they're mostly all, well, it's like realistic fiction, but it also has some like more obscure kind of silly elements to it. You know, dealing with a squirrel and more silly things that happen. But yet the lead character is actually very funny, the protagonist, and yeah. So, okay. And then the last three, which I'm going to talk about really quickly. So it's Rainy Nightingale, Louisiana's Way Home, and then Beverly Right Here. So they're three friends. These girls are three friends, and basically this is the most, I think this one's like for an older like age group. I think, you know, they don't really have illustrations. This is more like typical middle grade novel, where some of her other ones you could maybe say, I don't know, like younger. But I really enjoyed these as an adult, and my daughter doesn't really like realistic fiction, but she liked these. She read them, and her work draws you in. Like, it's like boom, like almost like from the first sentence, like you're in. That's how I feel. So these three are just about three different girls. So most of the books include, so the first one really includes all three of them. And then, you know, also these are girls who are dealing with different things, you know, different home lives. You know, these characters go through things and you go through it with them. So yeah, so this one's my favorite. I just really connected more with her story. She, yeah, this one, so basically she lives with her grandmother, and so basically, it's like more of a struggle in a way. I just really like, this one was my favorite, but they're all really good. And it's kind of all like same theme about people, like protagonists kind of like finding their way in life, finding their way home. The characters are very rich, very interesting. And then this is Beverly Right Here. I really need to reread this one because it didn't stick in my head, but I know that I enjoyed it. But I just know that Louisiana was my favorite, and I can like tell you about this book, but the video would be like 2 hours. So yeah, but I recommend all three. That's K. DiCamillo. Daughter did read all the 8 K. DiCamillos, but she did not read these, which are by Lauren Wolk. I would consider these modern classics. I think her writing is equally interesting for adults, well, for me, and for children. I would say these are a little bit more, these are like typical what you would say like a little bit older middle grade fiction, in my opinion. So let me talk about them. So I just finished these two. This is the sequel. This is Wolf Hollow, and this is My Own Lightning. So this one is a little dark in a sense. I know that the word dark is very simplified, but I don't want to give spoilers away. But this one, I don't know if I'm going to encourage my daughter to read, to be honest with you, in the next year. But I think when she's like 5th or 6th grade or higher, it would be okay. And it's not that I want to hide things from her, but they do have something in here that was like really unexpected, that was really dark, even for me as an adult. Which you could say, yes, that's like things that are a part of life. And I'm not going to say what it is, but it is on the darker side. So I would say really read the reviews, or if you're concerned. But so the sequel was very, very much lighter. It was more of like the characters in this book kind of like figuring out what happened in this book, and like almost like emotionally dealing with what happened in this book. Like, so this book was like very much needed, and I loved it because it kind of like tied up things for me, even so her writing is very engaging also. She writes almost all of these in first person. I love first person. And so like it's like it began with the China piggy bank that my Aunt Lily had given me for my 5th Christmas. My mother was the one who noticed when it went missing. "Are you hiding your piggy bank, Annabelle?" She was scrubbing down the baseboards in my bedroom while I put away my summer clothes. She must have noticed that the bank was missing because there was little else in my small room beyond the furniture itself and the windows, a comb and a brush, and a book besides my bed. So her dialogue is very realistic, and I like the way she writes. So those are the first two, which oh, sorry, I didn't say a little bit. This is about a little girl named Annabelle who's growing up in a small Pennsylvania town, and she's dealing with this bully. And then a lot of things go wrong dealing with this girl who is really a big bully. And it's just kind of good versus evil in a way. I don't know, whatever that means. And then this one's my favorite because it's sort of realistic historical fiction, because it's the story is totally fictional, but it's based on real events, which is about a child who her family had leprosy. And so it deals with people who had leprosy, which has really happened in the United States, that got sent to live on islands away from people because it was contagious. So it's all about this little girl who who's pretty much an orphan, and she's dealing with the aftermath of her family growing up who has leprosy. And so she's abandoned because her family had it. No one wants to touch her. So it's like a story that really deals with teaching children about acceptance, even though, like I said, this is pretty scary. This is a real thing. Leprosy, we don't really deal with it in modern society, 2022. It's not like they dealt with it back then. So it's kind of weird because I really wasn't exposed to even reading about leprosy. And so, but the story is beautiful. Even if you subtract the leprosy stuff, it's really more of a story about this little girl named Crow, who was kind of adopted by people who love her that are not her blood relatives. And so it's a story about that, acceptance and love. And I really love it. It's one of my favorite books. And I think this would be okay for a lot of different ages. And then Echo Mountain. So this one also, I would say probably more for older kids. It's basically when the Great Depression takes place, almost everything they own, Ellie's family is forced to leave her home in town and start over in the untamed forest of nearby Echo Mountain. There's little joy even for Ellie as her family struggles in the aftermath of an accident that left her father in a coma. So it's not nowhere near as dark, nowhere near as Wolf Hollow. And some people like reading books that are dark. I actually have varying life perspective from my own childhood, that there's a reason why certain books trigger me. I can't watch horror movies. I can't watch certain movies because it'll trigger me. So when I say a book is dark, I don't mean to talk bad about it. I just mean for me personally, it's too dark. But Wolf Hollow wasn't too dark. I would reread it, but I'm rambling. So that's what this book is about. It's basically about a little girl whose family's going through this ordeal because her father's in a coma, which is sad. But it's not super dark or anything like that, like Wolf Hollow, where I think you should preview the reviews as much. But again, I think she's a really good writer. Definitely check out her work if you're interested in reading realistic fiction and middle grade. Yeah. Okay. One of my other favorite authors who I would consider modern classics that will live on is Sara Pennypacker. Okay. So first time, a lot of people have heard of this books, but this is Pax 1 and then sequel Pax Journey Home. I loved these. Basically, it's about a fox and a boy and their friendship and love, and the story about their friendship and things that happen along the way. And it's kind of adventure. And I'm not going to say spoilers at all, but it's beautifully written. One chapter's from the boy, one chapter's from the fox. So it builds your interest back and forth, and I love that. I highly recommend these as read alouds and for adults. I think they're deal with universal themes. Yeah. And then this one, my daughter read this, of course, after I read it. She really didn't connect with this book because she thought it was not enough was happening in it. It's the definition of realistic fiction. And it's about a boy named Ware who's an introvert, and it's about him not wanting to spend a summer with like groups of kids or people, kind of him wanting to just do his own thing, and him meeting this other kid who he sparks a friendship with, and it's kind of about that friendship and about him, you know, just kind of like learning to be himself in life and things like that. Also like deals with universal themes. Her writing is also very beautiful. Her dialogue is very believable, and of course it's first person. And oh sorry, maybe it's not first person. Where glance, I'm sorry, it might be third person. Yeah, sorry, it isn't first person, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm an introvert too, so I really connected with him. And now the last book, I'm not going to spend long on this at all because I already did a whole video on these. So if you're interested, watch that video. This is The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place. So I have books 1 through 6. And these, I kind of hesitated. I didn't know. I really think that these are really well written. And I really think that these could possibly be considered like modern classics. They aren't as like realistic fiction in the sense of dealing with universal themes as much as the other ones, like on the sense of it. I don't know how to explain it. Like, this is about a governess. It reminds me of J.R.R. the kid version of J.R.R. A governess who ends up being the governess for these 3 kids who are found in the woods. So this is like a mystery series. This is like the first series for kids I've actually enjoyed personally myself as an adult, and that's why I'm including them, because there are a lot of quotable things in this book, in the sense that she quotes her old headmaster at her school, if I'm calling that correctly, Agatha Swathborn. She always says all these like life quotes and like life advice and things like that, which I think this book also brings up a lot of like writers and authors and poets, and that she's teaching the kids about, which I think is very more intellectual, which deals with more, like I said, classics. And so I really think that these are more fun and whimsical than anything else I've included as far as like dealing with adults, but I still enjoyed these as an adult, even though they're a little bit more whimsical, and like these would make really good read alouds. I can picture them being a really good audiobook with all the sounds, like the woof sounds that the kids make. But nonetheless, I wanted to include them because I still think they're one of my favorite kids books I've ever read. You know, like my daughter's in 4th grade, so for the past since she was a baby, I've been reading kids literature, and these are like some of my favorites. I really hope it wasn't too rambly. I really just wanted to include some of my favorite books and talk about why I'm including more classics. So thanks so much. I really appreciate everyone who watches and subscribes. Bye.